Well, good day, everybody. It's Greg Murphy here, and I'd like to welcome you to the next edition of The Depot, which is a podcast focused on getting to know the transport industry a little bit better. Today's guest is the New Zealand Chief Executive Officer of Ia Ara Aotearoa Transporting New Zealand, Nick Leggett. We're talking to Nick to find out more about what Transporting New Zealand is all about, what their key focus areas are, and the main areas of concern for the industry in New Zealand. Thank you very much for your time, mate. Welcome to The Depot. Before we crack into the guts of what we talk about on The Depot, we're just going to go a little bit of background on yourself. And it makes for pretty interesting reading, to be honest. Wellington schoolboy, schooled at Tawa College. You then went and gained a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in politics at Victoria University. You then started your career as a broker for Colliers International in commercial sales and leasing. Then you went on to be the mayor of Pororua City for 6 years, which is very interesting. That would have been a hell of a job. You're a director on a bunch of boards around the place, but you have been chief executive of Transporting New Zealand for almost 4 years. It's a hell of a list of things on a CV there, mate. Tell us a bit about how all that came about and the interest in politics as well.
Yeah, well, sort of talking about yourself. Talking about yourself is, sometimes it takes some adjustment. Look, I for some reason, my passion from quite a young age was politics, and you're somebody who's followed your passions. And it's look where it gets you. And for me, it was just being interested in what was happening in the world, and then thinking about how you can influence that, and particularly in my local community, which Purira is a pretty exciting place. And there's I think the traditional perceptions of Purira have changed a lot over the last few years, and I'd like to think that I was part of a council and working with the community that have done that and changed that. And so, I've always done things that interest me. What can I say that I'm passionate about? So, working for the road transport industry, it's interesting. When I was mayor, and I thought, well, I'm not going to be mayor forever because I didn't want to get sort of caught in the role. And I stepped down from Purira and I ran for the Wellington mayoralty because I felt that Wellington as a region needed better leadership. I still think that's the case. I don't think they're there yet, but I always thought, well, if I don't win, I'll have a chance to do something else. And funnily enough, I'd known Tony Friedlander, who was the chief executive of the first chief executive of Road Transport Forum, and also Ken Shirley, who I succeeded. And I thought it's a pretty interesting job, and it's kind of a job I think I'd really like, because it talks about the importance of moving freight around the country to drive our economy and to keep us fed, and the importance of roads, because I'd really seen the importance of roads, because Transmission Gully goes through near where I live, and we'd negotiated that when I was mayor in terms of getting the right link roads and getting the planning and things like that sorted. So it was a sort of a natural fit for me. And I think also the road transport industry is a sort of a common sense type sort of group of people, and they probably think I'm not that sensible at times, but I try and be, and just to try and come up with the sort of solutions, I think, and the kind of advocacy that's going to help them do their job more efficiently and in a sort of a safer work environment, and that's safer not just for them but for everybody who uses roads. So it's been an interesting industry. It's fascinating, and it's got its little quirks and idiosyncrasies, as any industry does, but they do great work, and they're often kind of unseen. I think that Kiwis have learned quite a lot through COVID about what trucks do for the country. And I think that it's important that we keep reminding people that actually stuff doesn't get into their homes and their businesses and to sort of, keep their lives going. Things don't appear by magic. Most of them have come on the back of a truck. And it's
you and I have actually spoken about that previously outside the confines of doing a podcast about the need and the desire to put the industry and put those that are working in there and professional drivers. We've talked about putting them on a pedestal, haven't we? So about the need to really give the correct acknowledgement to those people doing that, which allows every other person in New Zealand to go about their everyday lives and that we take for granted because we just expect all that stuff is going to turn up when we want it.
That's exactly right. And I think honouring those people that do that and recognising how important that, because there's a great, we've got a bit of an image that's been produced by one of our members in Auckland around how many truck trips it takes to have your ham and salad sandwich for lunch. And it's 30 truck trips. And if you think about all the ingredients to make bread, and then all the different things that you'd put in a sandwich, and when you think about it like that, it's kind of mind blowing. Everything's got to get from a point to another point at a time to come together, and it's hard to illustrate, but it's important that we do.
I had a really interesting conversation. Good friend of mine, and he lives in Taupō, and he's manages and owns a small trucking company, only 8 trucks. They're all quite small trucks, but they do a lot of sort of movement of things like caravans and boats and other small vehicles and things up, and they've got a lot of flat deck trucks up and down the country. And he left Taupō a week or so ago at 5 o'clock in the morning and drove to Auckland. And he said to me, how many, because he had a passenger with him, a young guy who was looking to get involved in the industry. And he said, how many trucks do you think we passed on the way, one way from Taupō at 5 a.m. in the morning into Auckland Central? How many do you think? And I said, well, I would, I reckon I'll say 300. And he goes, okay, that's interesting. Everyone that I've asked has said between 250 and 400 trucks. How many do you think it was?
700?
980. I had to take 2 steps back. I thought that just couldn't be possible. That was from 5 o'clock. It was a 4-hour trip or whatever it was.
That is, it's staggering, and it's those are the things. That's the story that the industry needs to tell. Think of all what's being moved, and Greg, we're pretty aligned with your view on the state of our roads and the fact that more needs to be invested in safer design and better maintenance. But the big competing interest is rail. And when you look at a train, the one train that perhaps goes between Auckland and Wellington at night, you've probably got the equivalent of about 30 50-ton trucks, on that train. Rail just can't compete with, 980 trucks. Think about how many trains that would have to be between Wellington and Auckland. It's just not going to happen. And it's those trucks are going from A to B. They're not going from a point at a railway station to another point at a railway station and having to have a truck at either end. So it's great. I think it's a fantastic stat. Yeah,
it is. It's an amazing stat. It completely blew me away. It blew him away, and he's in the industry. But when you're driving along the roads, it's just another one goes past. You're not thinking how many it actually adds up to being. Right, tell us. We want to talk a little bit more about what Transporting New Zealand is. There's been a recent amalgamation of Road Transport Forum and the Road Transport Association. So when and why have the two of them come together?
Well, I'll be really upfront with you. And most people probably, this is sort of industry politics. There won't be much of a bother to most people, so I'm not going to go into great detail. But a year ago, there were 4 bodies in the road transport industry. And the Road Transport Forum, which I ran originally, was the peak body, and it did the sort of political advocacy, technical and policy advocacy, and we were the spokespeople in the media for road transport. the Road Transport Association, which was the sort of member facing, along with New Zealand Trucking and National Road Carriers, they did we represented their interests in Wellington. But the Road Transport Association said, look to the other two, look, guys, we should just have one organisation. This is just silly. There's just too much duplication. We're cutting across each other.
Inefficiency.
We're undermining the interests of the industry because we're not singing from the same song sheet. And that was rejected, unfortunately, by the other two. And so the Road Transport Association said, well, that's it. We want to take you guys out of the forum and we'll merge. And that's what's happened. And we've become Transporting New Zealand. So, we're in a really good position here because we represent the whole country. We've got members in every pocket of the country, different sectors of the industry, but we're here in Wellington. So we've also got staff, we've got team members everywhere. So we're in a good position, although we're Wellington based, don't hold that against us, but we've got, the good relationships that have been built over 30 years with government and in the media and politicians. And what the industry said to us really clearly is those are the things they most want in an association. And so we think we're in sort of pole position to do that. A lot of what we do is not up in lights. It's the day-to-day conversations. You'll appreciate this, saying to if it's the transport agency, if it's Waka Kotahi, hey, they might come and say, well, what do you think about this idea with, some form of compliance? We say, actually, that's going to mean a lot more work or a lot more costs, and we can actually, head things off. And of course, you can't talk about all those things, but it's trying to be sensible. Once again, it's trying to get good compliance from the industry's part, but a good regulatory sort of approach. And that does take challenges, particularly in this environment. Different regulators with WorkSafe and Waka Kotahi and MPI as well for the livestock industry. It's trying to get people onto the same page. And I'll be really frank with you. Well, it won't be any surprise to you. The government is not particularly fond of cars or trucks, and so it does take. It's not a great environment at times for us, but we try and be polite, but we are forced to speak out sometimes, a little bit more frankly than might be advisable. But we've got to make the point. That's what we do.
Yeah, so we made that point before about the amount of trucks on the road doing the jobs that they're doing, which there is no other way to get that done. So how difficult is that conversation that you are then having with the people in power when they want an economy to continue to grow and continue to deliver and do all these things, yet the economy is based on the things that we've talked about? Where's the equilibrium? I just find that really difficult to even explain, let alone try and understand or argue those points with the politicians.
It's a really good question, and it's a hard question and a hard answer, because what you've got is you've got ideology driving these things. You've got a belief, no facts, no evidence, just a belief that this is how things should be. And when you it's important we have beliefs, we all do, but when that trumps a realistic idea of what it takes to run a business and the realities of employing staff, of paying staff, of ballooning costs, and an infrastructure network that's below par, and the impact that has, then it's quite difficult. It's really often a conversation of the friendly deaf, because you know what you think, they know what they think, but there's just no common ground around some issues, not all issues. There's some good, we do some good work with the government, but it's on this fundamental stuff, very difficult.
Yeah, I get that with just the experiences that I'm having through the road safety sides of things and Road to Zero, and the logic that I see every single day driving on our roads. I mean, literally driving on our roads is the way to actually see what is actually happening, and yet trying to get that through, and also then get people to want to actually come and visualize that.
Yes,
it's a very very difficult task. Yeah.
well, Road to Zero is, I mean, that's your classic case, isn't it, of a belief system. They don't,
absolutely.
but they believe that focusing on these things is going to lead to a reduced number of accidents and serious injuries and deaths on our roads. And actually, what's frustrating is to hear for people, like you and I and others who have the same aspiration, but just think that the means to get there need to be wider. But what they try and do, and this is a concern, and it's happened actually in the Hawke's Bay, that we have bureaucrats essentially saying, you don't care about people's safety. They label, they try and label when you disagree, and it's very sad. And it's the frustrating thing is, of course, that it's not going to have the impact that they think it's going to have, and that's all I care about. And I think you do too, based on everything I've ever heard from you, what you just said. What's the impact going to be of this policy position or this action on actually reducing harm on our roads? And we've got the highest number of deaths at our 6-month point through the year since 2018. That's really concerning, given the fact we've been through some lockdowns. But interestingly, Greg, Waka Kotahi's staff numbers since 2018 have gone from 1,372 to 2,081. 700 more people. Lots more managers and admin and PR people.
PR.
Yep, but they've actually, they're losing technical staff. I mean, we find they want to have conversations, and if you don't want to have the conversation that suits them, you just get they just ignore you. And so we take kind of stuff to them that says, well, why doesn't the industry could take this leadership, and we could really, in terms of, say, compliance, a more cooperative approach, still strong regulation, but you just go around in circles. And so all those new staff, what have we achieved? More people have died.
Yep. Well, the other thing we've achieved is we've managed to spend, and for no gain, hundreds of millions of taxpayers' dollars to get to that point too. And yes, you can. How long is it going to take before this again? We realise that this path is the wrong way. And if you go through history of road safety strategies, this one effectively is the same as all the ones previous for the last 20, 30 years. The only difference is there is definitely tunnel vision, very much a tunnel vision right now on a couple of topics that they are sticking to like glue and are not wavering at all, which you have to give a little bit of credit to, but unfortunately it isn't going to achieve anything. Yes, we do need that tunnel vision on a lot of things, but unfortunately we're stuck on the same topics as what has failed us for the last 20, 30, whatever years down the line. And that's the bit that I see the wastage and is very concerning. Anyway, we've probably got a little bit off topic, but it's good to talk to someone who understands and we're on the same wavelength. And we have actually now just covered a few of the key responsibilities of what Transporting New Zealand is all about. But what I'm really keen to know is your thoughts on the main things that are impacting, and I suppose we have covered a few as well, but other things that are impacting the transport industry that you see at the moment that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, other than advocacy.
Yeah, well, road conditions, just sort of, it stays a little bit on this topic, but in real terms, the budget for road maintenance has not increased, and once again, the government have they don't want to elevate roading investment. They don't want new roads. And they say, the real thing is that cars and trucks represent private choice. That's actually what it comes down to. It's not centrally controlled. If you jump in your car, you can go where you like. And if goods in a truck represent the free market at work. Whereas, of course, a train for freight or for public transport represents, the government at the centre of things. So I think there's a strong ideological divide. But our just to move away from that a little bit, so we don't, drown ourselves in the politics. Our industry, like every industry, facing big cost increases, and of course the big headline is fuel. We've just got a survey that's we're sort of awaiting the results. Quite a big industry survey actually, just to understand what proportion of business costs where they've grown in the last year. So fuel is a proportion of business. We have a what's called an industry cost index, which moves every quarter. So we track, and our members get access to that, and they can look at where costs are moving across their the industry and their sector of the industry as a whole. What we've done with this survey is we wanted some real-time information, which basically said, as a proportion of your cost, where have wages moved, where has fuel, diesel moved, and where are your other cost pressures? And we're awaiting the results of that, because it's going to be very important to see we're a service industry and we're often stuck in the middle. And I think we'll get to this point a little bit later on in our discussion about why this is so important. But passing on costs sometimes is hard, because customers say, well, sorry, you're not doing that. So what we're saying to our members is, and this is where this advocacy, we can help educate industry customers. We can also say, actually, here is some evidence around where costs are moving. You have to pass these on if you're going to stay in business. And we know why the country needs a competitive transport industry, because we've got to be able to move things around, and we've got to, there's got to be some choice in that. So this is a big thing for us at the moment, because people are hurting. And the transport industry, if you don't know how much it costs to run your business, to keep your truck running down the road, and you don't know how much you need to charge, and you have to work that out yourself. Of course, we don't work that out for people. You're going to go broke pretty quick at a time when you've got escalating costs. So that's really, I think, becoming really big for us. That's something that we can do for our members that nobody else can. We've got our Grant Thornton report, as I said, that comes out quarterly. We run every 5 years a cost study through Massey University that forms the basis of that report, and then it moves in that quarterly. So it's access to information that's quite vital.
Yeah, that is hugely beneficial, isn't it, for the industry as a whole, to be able to have someone that's doing that work, because it's a lot of information that needs to be put into the right places in the right context along the way. Yeah. So that's an enormous. How many people do you have there working Transporting New Zealand, for example?
Our team's about 15 at the moment. Yep. And almost half of them probably work remotely, around the country. We've actually just picked up Mike McRandall, who ran CBST for the police on the South Island. So we've been very lucky. He's a 30-year police veteran. He's located in Christchurch. He's running our regional and sector team. That's people that deal with those specific industry issues and the face-to-face member issues. Really important. And then we've got, we've had some change, because things have moved around, and we've merged, got some really good legal expertise on board, some really good policy and technical, people on board as well. And, if I do say so, that just isn't, we've got the skills and sort of talent that's not available in the other associations. So it's a good, it's a great team. And we've also got, I think, a better functioning microphone with the media to be able to really talk about the issues that are impacting, speak on behalf of the industry. We did some great work during COVID, Greg, around getting, I know it sounds silly, but, when we went into that first lockdown, not all freight could move. The government felt they had to dictate what was essential freight and what wasn't. We worked hard and we were able to advocate to get those barriers broken down very quickly. We built operating guidelines very quickly to allow transport operators, which were actually stolen with our blessing by other industries because they were regarded as good. But things like for drivers, toilets on main freight routes were locked up by councils, and we got those opened within 24 hours really, and most of them, and that's where advocacy plays a part. And so it's good. It's we're problem solvers, but we also have to try and anticipate where problems are coming and try and think a little bit more strategically about, well, what is the industry going to require down the line?
Yeah, I mean, the whole COVID thing. My goodness, didn't. I'm sure as your role as CEO there that that was never anything you were going to have to deal with. And my goodness, I bet you learned. You would have learned. Everyone would have just learned so many things that would never have been on your radar previously.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's just about using and those things are going to help of the industry.
Those things will help you, I'm sure, down the line.
Completely. I mean, just, you know what? It actually made me less afraid of naming solutions to problems. So actually going into a situation and, you were under pressure with COVID because, for instance, if a vehicle servicing and certifying services are not open, well, the industry grinds to a halt. So actually being able to go in and say, this is what we need, this is what we think you should do, and getting some success from that, I've got a bit more fearless in that respect. And I think we've also got the I think a greater understanding from officials and from politicians and from the public around what the road transport industry does.
So Nick, if we could sort of dot point maybe the top 5 areas of advocacy and work that you're doing at Transporting New Zealand.
Yeah, sure. Look, the first one is actually telling the story of what the industry does every day to the public, to government and officials in Wellington, but also, trying to illustrate exactly what the industry does and the contribution that it makes to the country and the economy. That's our sort of headline priority, but also climate. I think, how does the industry demonstrate that it's doing everything it can to reduce its emission footprint, and really building some programs that can assist with that, as well as I think leading on the need for better roads, better roading investment, better maintenance, and really holding the government's feet to the flame on that, because of course the road is the workplace of the industry. We also need to keep building the future workforce. So we do that through Road to Success, our traineeship, trying to bring new, younger, more diverse workers into becoming truck drivers and working in other jobs in the industry. And finally, I would say is a better regulatory environment, one that makes it easier for transport companies to understand and access compliance tools, so they're safer, they're more compliant, and they're building better awareness around safety within their workforce.
So I don't know if this is an interesting question or not, but what can the transport industry itself, what can it do to be helping Transporting New Zealand? What could they be doing? Is there anything that is obvious that if they were doing better as a group or as a industry would make your jobs easier or better?
I think that for me, a couple of key things I'll say too. The first is around workforce. It's around bringing in the next generation of drivers, and that may not be 16-year-olds, right? In fact, it's probably won't be 16-year-olds. There's a view in the industry we've got to get into schools and actually the next generation of drivers probably already have a job and almost definitely have a license and are probably in their 20s or 30s. They may not be blokes. They might be, we've got to build and attract greater diversity, particularly among women, and that means actually sometimes changing workplaces and modifying behaviours, putting in facilities like female toilets, but and just modifying the job sometimes. If you want to reach out and widen the number of people who might come and work for you, and it is about attitude. It's about recognising that if you're an employer, you're going to have to invest in your staff. And we've got an industry traineeship, Te Ariki Tour, Road to Success. Now we've got people lining up who want to work in the transport industry. We ran a campaign called SOS, Save Our Supply Chain, earlier in the year because we were terrified that Omicron was going to wipe out, driver workforces for periods. And so we advertised for everybody who had a class 5 or 4 license across the country to come and work. We had 600 people put their names down. So there are drivers out there, but there is this view in the industry, there's a shortage of drivers. My view is at this point in time, we don't have a shortage of drivers. Good employers don't have a shortage of drivers. We've got, as I say, we've got people lining up to be trainees. We have a shortage of transport companies who want to take on trainees. And, there's this view that's emerged over time, probably many decades, that a driver with experience, who's safe, with a class 5 license can just turn up and you can employ them. Actually, we're going to have to create those people. If we want to keep a flow, get the right kind of people, a more diverse workforce, we're going to need to create those people and we're going to need to pay them well. Now, actually, I think the industry is paying quite well. And of course, in this inflationary period, it's going to have to happen to keep people. But I think it's it's slightly outdated now to say that heavy truck drivers are not well paid. I think that's they've moved up over the last 5 to 7 years in wages, and it's continuing to move. And it's challenging some of those old sort of ideas that you've got to be working 70 hours a week. Frankly, 25-year-old's not going to want to work 70 hours a week. So who's going to have to adjust? It's the industry.
And there is a lot of players in the industry that are fully in line with this too, isn't there? I mean, there is a lot of operators that are totally talking that same language. Then I'm sure there's others that haven't caught up. Yeah.
But I mean, my message is, and it's, often you'll hear industry associations just singing the tune. Actually, the biggest message needs to be to the transport industry. You have to change. We've got the tools to help. That's the point. It won't happen quickly, but we've got to do it. And you asked about the other thing that we need. I think just to move on from workforce really quickly is around emissions and climate. Change is coming. What we're saying to the government is they do what typical governments do. They want to pick winners now for 10, 20, 30 years. And invest in the shiny stuff. We're saying actually, energy efficient driving technique, good infrastructure build and investment and better roads, alternative fuels, synthetic fuels. Let's go for the low hanging fruit and make some changes now. Let's get a 10, 20% reduction in the next 5 years, rather than trying to pick out who's is it going to be EVs, is it going to be hydrogen, whatever the case, that will take care of itself. But what can we do now, because this is coming, and if customers are not asking about it, they soon will be. So let's get ahead of it, and we're sort of trying to build those tools to help. But there's got to be pickup, and there's also got to be incentive from all avenues.
I mean, to pick something that is going to make a significant change instantly. It may have, I don't know if it's open yet or not, and they're talking about not building roads. But we've just got that enormously well done bypass through Hamilton.
Yeah,
that's going to save. It's going to save. I don't know. I mean, the numbers are going to be astronomical in time, efficiency, fuel, all that it's going to save everybody. because we've gone and invested in a piece of road, which is just going to be such a significant. And then there was the one that was finished a couple of years ago, obviously going up over the hill there, bypassing Huntley, which was again was a brilliant piece of infrastructure. And now that's continued on, and we've got to keep doing that, because that is going to be monstrous in efficiency saving, isn't it? That's there's your point.
And yep, that's it. And most importantly, what do these roads, these new roads save, Greg? They save lives. They save,
Yep.
They stop accidents, and there are no more roads being built, like this. So
like
the government have said we don't want to do it. So that's how we're circling around. That's how that is a big problem. I mean, it's the road is the workplace of the professional driver, and they've got to be safe primarily, but they've also got to optimize, efficient running, and that's more important now that we're conscious of the emissions footprint of the transport industry. So lots of really important things wrapped up in this, and we just try and make these points in different ways as well as we possibly can.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, question that is interesting to us here at AutoSense, and is one around the chain of responsibility, which is a piece of legislation that is being used and has been sort of pushed into more space in Australia than what it has here. But we do have it here. It is part of legislation here. A lot stricter in Australia, probably more prosecutions and things taking place.
Yes.
Where do you see this here in New Zealand, this chain of responsibility, and what, where is it heading in the future? Should we be doing more with it now?
Yep. It's really important to us as well. And, it's why I touched on that idea of we're a service industry, right? Yes. And we're often the meat in the sandwich. And therefore, what our customers consign, the time, the rate, the conditions of how freight is delivered, and the competitiveness of the market that they operate in, those are all big influences. And I don't think there's a consciousness of that. I think a lot of customers don't care. Big people with market power don't care. And that's a big problem. So, this is where we do need to beef up the legislation or the regulation, and then the enforcement of that. So we better mirror Australia. We're actually doing a bit of work in the livestock industry here, because essentially what happened was livestock operators have been very concerned that they cannot work to legal hours with the instructions they're given by their customers. Now, what happens is, we can't do that, because we're going to be breaching our driving hours. Okay, well, we're going to go to
someone else,
Joe down the road. Well, that's an abuse of market power when that happens. And we've worked with Waka Kotahi, WorkSafe, MPI to bring not just our industry but our customers to the table. We're signing an MOU to sort of say, look, these are the key issues that we identify, because there are some things that the livestock transport industry can do differently. But essentially, the rate that's paid, and the practices and the expectations of the transport industry are often not, in our view, they don't sit well with good safety practices. So it's understanding it's a chain, and that transport is often the end of that chain and the least powerful link. But we get pinged. All the risk falls to us. That has to change. And what you find then is that, we're the ones that get the fines if it's cartage of, animals who've got, that are damaged in some way, or if it's speed, or if it's work time, we're the ones that get, hit. And so, just to give you an example, we had an issue with the NATE, the animal tracing that occurs with stock, and if the paperwork was not received by the farmer, and the transporter was taking it to the works, it was all the fine was going to fall with the transport operator. So we went to the minister and the select committee and said, this is a couple of years ago now, look, no, we can't be done with this. This can't be, we can't have the responsibility here. Yeah. But they changed it. They said, okay, you guys get the declaration from the farmer, you get the right paperwork, and you'll be sweet. And they made that change. Well, that is good chain of responsibility in action. So we understand this. And I think there's some really good work going at the moment with some fatigue management and livestock. There's some good work, as I say, going with this MOU. And I think that will filter out into other sectors of the industry. It's acute. Chain of responsibility is an acute issue in livestock, but of course it's across the whole industry, and it's often because we're the least strong party, and we just have to stand up better to assert ourselves and assert the service that we offer and the value that we add.
Yeah. So where's chain of responsibility sit as far as in your top 5 of things to do on a daily?
Definitely in the top 5.
Yeah.
It's I think it's educating the industry about it, and I mentioned this cooperative compliance sort of thing. What I'd like to see as a sort of a one-stop shop for transport operators that shows them how to be compliant with the law, that leads them with really good health and safety practices, and engaging their staff in toolbox meetings and getting all the right stuff happening and building real awareness.
But it's strong. You need a very good understanding though too. I mean, you could very easily get lost in tick box.
Yeah. It's about awareness and empowering people to make choices that are safer. But to me, good chain of that is what's going to lift. If we can lift industry understanding and awareness and practice, that's when we say, well, we can demonstrate this, this, and this, and we're beginning to name the terms a bit better, and we're safer. Then our role in the chain is suddenly going to become a lot stronger. And a lot of it is about industry mindset as well. Like, I totally see the value the industry produces and adds. Customers often don't. Well, we've got to talk more about that. So that's the challenge for that. That's sort of. But I can tell you, I have. There are industry leaders that every time they see me, where are we with chain of responsibility? Well, the best thing we're doing with chain of responsibility is this livestock project. Getting others in the chain to understand. I tell you what, Greg, they're not that keen. And I tell you this, we will be keeping the heat on them in quite a big way. So watch this space.
Yeah, it is a space that's going to just continuously evolve, and big change. Hey, did you ever think you're going to be this passionate about transport? When you started the job,
I thought I'd be this passionate about roads, but probably not. I mean, it's like it's what you get into, isn't it? And the deeper your understanding, the more you see, and especially when I see good people working hard, taking risks, skilled truck drivers doing great work, and I see that undervalued or not properly compensated. That makes me get out of bed and want to work on those people's behalf. Yeah.
Well, good on you. I mean, it's not hard to get something under your skin and want to make it better, especially when it can be better. I think that's what it's about, isn't it? It can be better, so you just can't live with leaving it as it is. Hey, listen, we'll move on. You've been fantastic. This has been really, really interesting to listen to you. Obviously, AutoSense is in the game in a big way, producing some amazing technology and training and safety solutions out there for the industry. So we'll come to an end of the podcast with a bit of a safety question for you. fatigue and distraction, key concern that you are seeing and hearing about in the industry?
Massive. And, I think that fatigue management is the number one challenge for the industry. And irrespective of whether you've got, a safe fleet, well-trained drivers, fatigue is the boogeyman that's always on your back. And you've got to constantly be ensuring that it's not there and that you're taking steps to reduce risk. But I'd say this to you as well. When you look at stats, and I've just today had a sort of a quick look at fatal accidents involving trucks over the last couple of years.
Yep.
The sad news is that in most accidents involving trucks, it's trucks being hit by other cars. And so fatigue is an issue for the industry that we have to take responsibility for, and we've got to model the kind of behaviour and the kind of systems and the kind of technology that's going to help make it less of a factor. But it's actually in our interests. What about the people out there who drive, and every day in their own personal capacity and don't manage that? Because
that was actually the next part of what I've got written here as a question. This is also the public, the responsibility that they have.
So this is the thing, and we've got to do a job, whether it's you, it's AutoSense, it's Transporting New Zealand, it's taxis, it's Ubers. We've got to talk about our fatigue in our sectors, but we've also got to hold the mirror to everybody who uses the road. It is a shared public thoroughfare at the end of the day. And if you're a truck driver who, spends hundreds of thousands of kilometres on the road, then you want to know that if you're taking responsibility and you're taking all steps to reduce fatigue as a risk, you want to know that, those 500 cars that come towards you every day, that those drivers are doing the same thing.
Absolutely. That's very well said, and there is way too many examples of it. And I think that also, the industry as a whole, sees that there's, another report, another piece of imagery, another story on the news about involving a crash with a truck, and unfortunately, straight away, majority of people think it's the truck is at fault straight away, when we know that is actually not
mostly that's not the case. Yeah.
So what's how do we get government to see this for more of the serious issue that it is, or do you think you're starting to get a change in seeing that at all? Because I'm concerned that I think distraction fatigue is still incredibly underreported, and there's reasons where it cannot be verified, but I think based on what I see out there on the roads, certainly distractions underreported and as the cause of a crash, and fatigue is from the information we have and the data we have from using Guardian, we know that it's underreported as well.
I don't think it's been confronted. When you're obsessed with speed as the
yes,
and you're obsessed with all the factors external. That's what stunned me about this Road to Zero, those ads, which I think are, quite powerful in some parts, but it's the car, that where all the people get out. And the signal it's sending is, oh, look, if you make a mistake, you're going to be a lot safer because of all this stuff the marshmallow, that's been put around the car. What we're talking about here, and the message I hear from you is, it's about individuals taking responsibility for their behaviour and doing things to reduce the risk of that stuff happening. And that just isn't understood, I don't think.
Well, I don't think, but also, again, it's how you're supposed to know something if you don't know it. I mean, this is the low base level of acceptance that we have around our licensing, and then you're supposed to go out there and get experience to get better.
Trial and error.
Trial and error at 80, 50, 30, whatever kilometres an hour, the damage that can be done at 30 kilometres an hour. I don't know who advised Waka Kotahi on doing an ad where a possum runs in front of your car and you are supposed to swerve into a barrier to avoid the possum.
Yeah.
I mean, who advised such stupidity in the first place?
Yeah.
To actually tell people that when a possum runs out in front of you, you swerve your car to avoid.
That's the public safety message that they wanted.
That's the public safety message right there.
Dumb.
When we're dealing with that, we're not going to win any battle against trying to get to zero. So
but they think they're so pleased with themselves with this advertising, and what are they spending, $15 million or something? I don't know if that's annually or it's over 3 years. I think it might be annually. They're so pleased with themselves with this campaign, yet the fundamentals, as you've just identified, of the Road to Zero campaign, the settings are wrong.
So flawed. But again, we could go on about that for a long time. Hey, listen, Nick, brilliant. Really, really, thank you for your time. Some great stuff in there. I'm sure everyone that is going to log on and download the depot is going to get a lot from that and enjoy the conversation that we've had. Great work that you are doing, you and your team, continuously advocating and looking after the industry as best you can. So thank you for your time, mate. Much appreciated.
Hey, thank you for doing this, and thanks for all your ongoing work. It's great to have such an articulate ally who can better make the point than we can most of the time. So thanks.
It's great to work together. Thank you.
Cheers.
So I hope you enjoyed my chat with Transporting New Zealand CEO Nick Leggett. Really informative, interesting to listen to Nick. He's very passionate about what he does, obviously, but to understand more about Transporting New Zealand and all the work that they do helping the industry. Obviously, thank you to AutoSense for putting this podcast together. And if you like what you heard, be sure to leave a rating and a review. And until next time, catch you later.